Hello, Big Sky, Southwest Montana, and friends and family of the Big Sky area. Welcome to session 8 of the Big Sky Virtual Town Hall. I'm Eric Ladd. I'll be co-hosting tonight's panel with Joe O'Connor. Since mid-March, we've all been on this COVID roller coaster, and as the landscape shifts, we are trying to stay attuned with developments and plans. And so today we hope to cover some of these important topics. As always, our goal is to cover issues related to businesses big to small, help further discussions regarding the COVID situation, and now the reopening of our economy in not only Montana, but Southwest Montana and the Big Sky area. This week has been some very interesting times as we reopen and have neighboring states like Idaho, North Dakota, and Wyoming get more aggressive with their openings, so time will tell as we open up our region. First, a big thank you to our sponsors for helping underwrite this platform. We have the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce. They're doing great work for all the local businesses and been a solid platform for the community. We appreciate what the Chamber's definitely been stepping up to do, not only on a year-round basis, but especially the last 8 weeks. And also the Big Sky Town Centers Association for helping sponsor this platform. The TCOA has been doing a great job in helping promote all the local businesses in Big Sky. And remember, shop local. This is a really important time to make sure you get out and support those local businesses, especially now that they're starting to reopen, and make sure that you can track those local dollars back to a local vendor. Really important time to be supporting that. So with that, let's get to today's lineup. Today's lineup includes Taylor Middleton, the president and CEO of Big Sky Resort, Brian Sprenger, the airport director of Bozeman Airport, Kirsten King, the owner of Big Sky Vacation Rentals. We have Danny Bierschwale, the executive director of the Big Sky Resort Tax District, and Jeremy Harder is joining us from the Big Sky School District. So with that, jump into bringing back Taylor Middleton to the platform. He was with us 9 weeks ago. Taylor, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
Well, I can't believe, Taylor, that it's been 9 weeks, but it has been. You were on that first town hall that we had when all of this hit us, and wow, time's flown by. So I guess the first thing I'd ask you, Taylor, is how's it going in your world, and how's, what's your kind of day-to-day been like the last 9 weeks, and what you focused on?
It's both the longest and the shortest 8 or 9 weeks that I've ever experienced, right? It's like Groundhog Day. Every day we wake up and do more of the same thing. But listen, the bottom line is that we're ready to get our community back in business. We're ready to get our businesses generating revenue. We're ready to restart this economy in Big Sky, in the state of Montana, and in the United States and in the world. And next to taking care of one another and making sure that everybody's healthy, getting our economic engine restarted is the most important thing that we need to focus on now, right?
Absolutely. Well, it's definitely a great segue into what we're hoping to talk a lot more about in today's town hall and the future town halls, is that reopening and getting that engine turned back on. So recently you guys announced the opening of the summer plans. I mean, what did that feel like to be able to step back out and make an announcement like that?
It feels good. We announced the operations of golf beginning this Friday in front of Memorial Day. We're gonna be opening the Whitewater Inn, the motel down in the canyon, the same day. And then we've announced our mountain biking program starting after the snow melts later in June. That's all phase 1, and it feels really good. This reopening, I think I might have said before, if we thought closing was hard, we've learned reopening is even harder, right? We've got a new set of parameters. We've got a new way of doing business. The health and safety of our workers, it's so important. So getting this reopening right is complicated. I was reading in Imagine This and Explore Big Sky just this past week, and you interviewed four civilians from the community, right? Asking them what they thought about COVID and reopening. And every one of them had some kind of mixed tone, just like all of us talk about. It's like, yeah, we need to get our jobs going and we need to make paychecks, but we also are concerned about our health and safety. And we're really, there was a lot of feedback saying that closing our community was the right thing to do. And they said it, and I've had a lot of people say that to me. But we're also anxious and a little nervous about how do we get open again in an economically viable and healthy fashion.
Absolutely. What is let's talk about staffing for a moment. Obviously, you guys are one of the largest employers, not only in our town, but in the region. What will your staffing plans look like for this year in terms of, kind of a percentage of staff as compared to a normal summer?
Yeah, it will be thinner. Our models are showing that we're going to have less visitation. We like most businesses tune our staffing and our business model to our revenue projections, right? And so we've got the business model piece to the staffing, but we also have the housing piece to our staffing. Whereas we used to put 2 and sometimes 3 people in a living arrangement, this summer and probably this whole year, it's just going to be 1 person, 1 unit, right? So it's going to be thinner. But our operations this summer especially are going to be thinner too. So we're not going to need as many staff as we've traditionally had.
Yeah. If the COVID trend were to continue to improve, do you foresee, even more ability to open more this summer? I mean, what about things like events or conferences or any type of gathering this summer? Is that even on the docket for you guys to consider?
Yeah, so this is what the data says. We're going to hear from the king of airlines in just a minute with Brian Sprenger, but 10% or so of the people that traditionally travel or traditionally fly are flying right now. We've got the 14-day quarantine in place for out-of-staters, but we sense that that's going to be lifted by early June if things go well. But then when we look at surveys, well-done surveys with large sample sizes of consumer desire to travel, about 70% of consumers say, I'm staying put. I am not interested in travel. And so we've got to build business models around a much smaller level of business this summer and then grow into something that's bigger. But there's another reason, just the economic viability that's one of the important reasons for a smaller scale to our opening. But listen, protection, face mask, social distancing, contagion prevention, reduced occupancy in dormitories, private guiding versus group tour events. All these things we've got to figure out how to do it really well with smaller numbers before we can mass produce it to larger numbers.
Absolutely. I'm sure it's probably too early to tell, but you're certainly starting to already hear discussions about how the ski industry might look this winter. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but any discussions about the winter time that can be announced yet, or is it's still kind of a wait and see mentality and seeing how the summer goes and how things progress?
Yeah, so we've been having real conversations with our friends who are leading resorts in the ski industry. And I'm telling you, it doesn't matter if you're in Montana or Colorado or Utah or Portillo or Ischgl or Japan. It's the same. This COVID thing is affecting the world in the same way. And anybody that's thoughtful is going about this very cautiously. It's not a time to wing it and be a tough guy and try to push your way through this. You need to do it thoughtfully and with intent of building systems that will stand up to pressure. And you don't want to open and then close again, right? And that's what's going on. The ski resorts are all projecting reduced visitation this winter in the US. And we're all designing plans to incorporate more social distancing, especially. The good news about skiing, though, is that it's naturally socially distanced, right? Those ski lifts are far apart, and those chairs are far apart, and for Big Sky and for our community, that's a real marketing advantage that we have, having the lowest skier density per acre of any major destination in the United States. So we're going to turn that into that. We're going to lever that somehow. But we're expect to answer your question directly. This winter is going to be slower than we've seen for the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly feels like that's a trend that we're heading towards. You've been part of this community for a long time, Taylor. You know, it's been an interesting 9 weeks around town. In one way, it's nice because it's been so quiet and we've got some, you know, empty trails to run around and enjoy and play on. But in another sense, you're starting to hear the word of people really lacking that sense of connection and community. And as we start to see here announcements like the Music in the Mountain series getting canceled and some of our other really fun gatherings getting canceled, you know, there's really becoming that concern of how do we retain that sense of community and gathering. And I guess, you know, this is more of a philosophical question. What advice do you have, or what role would the resort play in kind of helping build and retain that sense of community in Big Sky?
Yeah, you know, that's a good question. Well, so a couple of big events are still on the books, like the Rut, like the Bull Ride. We hope that those big events will be able to stay on the books. But listen, so as many of you know, I'm an avid mountain biker, right? And I had one of those experiences of community just the day before yesterday. I was out riding with my buddy Micah Robin, who drags me around and just thumps me. But we started running into friends on trails from 30 feet and 15 feet. We were sky-fiving one another and how are you doing? And I saw 15 friends on bike or on foot in the course of 3 hours. And you know how that made me feel? Great.
Wow. Yep, that's it is fun to be able to have those run-ins out there. Taylor, what's something that keeps you up at night?
Yeah. It's the economy, right? We have to get this thing restarted, the big global economy, and we've got to get this town's economy restarted, and we need to figure out a way to do it as soon as possible, not being brazen and not being callous, but get it restarted incrementally in small doses, and then keep it open, make sure it works, and then let's get fully open. And all of that needs to happen before the vaccine, right? It's going to get a lot easier when we have a vaccine, let's say 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, but we can't wait for that vaccine to happen. We need to, like you've heard me say before, we need to get ample testing so we can do random testing in our community to tell where illness might be, so we can tamp it down and make sure we don't have a big outbreak like Ishgal had or like Sun Valley had. And so we can keep our people healthy and we can operate successfully and then grow that model. And what keeps me up at night, and what keeps our team up at night, because really Big Sky Resort, it's like 10, 15, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 people that make that place tick. What keeps us up at night is figuring out how to do that well with a viable business model and healthily.
Yeah. Well, cheers to that. Let's hopefully can make that happen. What's something you're optimistic about as we look to this reopening?
I'm optimistic that America is going to do what America does. I'm optimistic that we're going to get a vaccine. I'm optimistic that we've got great medical care and the Big Sky Medical Center and doctors and nurses and staff there to take care of our community. There's a lot to be optimistic about.
Yeah. Well, that anyone that knows Taylor Middleton knows he's optimistic. So thank you for that. And I appreciate that. It's nice to not only have that in a leader, but as a community member who's been here a long time. Taylor, last question I'd have for you is 1 year from today, where do you think we sit? And you know, when we're having this conversation, you know, May 18th next year, where do you think and where would you like to see our community be?
I hope we're not all wearing masks, right? I'm going to be a mask. I am a mask wearer, and I encourage everybody to wear masks because it's not about catching it, but it's about giving it. I could have it right now, and I don't want to give it to anybody else, and I don't want somebody else to give it to me. So we all need to wear a mask now. But the good news is, if society is not wearing a mask 1 year from now, that means we're over the hump, and being over the hump will be at a good place to be.
Well, I appreciate that, Taylor. And I asked those questions for two reasons. One is I definitely appreciate your opinion on that. But secondly, is since you're the leader of like I said, the economic driver of our town, it's nice to know where the leader's head's at. I'll turn it over to you. Anything that you'd like to add, Taylor, or any thoughts or questions or thoughts back to the community that you'd like to share?
Oh, I just want to ask the community to take care of themselves and to take care of one another. And that's happening right now in spades. I can't tell you how many people are calling one another and checking on one another. And listen, that means so much to me when I get a call of support right now. And I know that means a lot to you, and I know it means a lot to Brian Sprenger. I called Brian a couple of weeks ago just to check in on him because he's got a lot on his plate, and he'll call me to check in on me, and we got to take care of one another, right? We're going to get through this.
Well, I appreciate that, Taylor. And like I said, you were with us on the first town hall 9 weeks ago, and I appreciate you coming back and sharing your thoughts. You know, once again, it's exciting to hear about the start of the opening for the summer, and remaining optimistic that we will be able to put together a winner, even though it looks like numbers will be down, but we'll be able to at least get out and enjoy some of that beautiful mountain. And thank goodness we have all that acreage to spread out on. So thank you, Taylor, for joining us today.
And let's hope for another big snow year. Wow, if we had a couple of really good ones, and I'm looking forward to one coming at us.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, wonderful. Once again, Taylor Middleton, CEO and President of Big Sky Resort, longtime local, and a great perspective on what's going on, not only in our community, but also he's calling the shots with Big Sky Resort. So it's important to know where his head's at, and very balanced approach to the decision-making that they're doing up there. So let's go to the air. Absolutely another big driver of this area is the airport, and we've been proud of bragging about all the success and growth and additions our airport's had over the years. So we thought we'd bring the man, the myth, the legend, the guy that's calling the shots down there at the airport. Joe, take it away.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, appreciate everybody being on here today. Brian Sprenger, welcome. We have you're the airport director for Bozeman Yellowstone International Airport for 11 years, but you've been with the airport for far longer than that, 10 years as assistant director, and you've seen major changes over that time as the airport grows and Bozeman grows around it. The changes lately have been pretty drastic. Brian, thanks for joining us today.
You bet. Appreciate it.
How has airline travel been affected from a numbers perspective for you and your team over the past 2 months?
Well, it took a very drastic, immediate turn, obviously, in March. I think when we look back at the decision that Taylor made to close the resort back in the middle of March, it was a shock to the system, along with MSU sending students home at spring break. But it was by far the right decision. I think as a community, we need to really thank those people who made those hard decisions then. And even though it meant drastic changes very quickly on a local basis, we were seeing that on a worldwide basis as well. Our traffic in April was about 3.1% of normal. And that took us back about 50 years in terms of the passenger traffic to about 1970. Going into May, the good news is, and I think one of the things that we all look for now is any good news is good news. And so, so far in the month of May, we're tracking probably about 8 to 10% of normal. Each week is seeing a little bit of an increase, and going into the summer in June, I think it'll probably be 15 to 20% of normal by the time we see the June numbers come in. So it's not gangbusters by any means, but it is a slow, steady recovery that I hope continues throughout the year and into next year.
Yeah, are certainly tough numbers for April, but I'm glad to hear that things are starting to move in the right direction. Let me switch just a little bit. What are flights looking like in terms, just for people curious, what are they looking like in terms of PPE for employees and for travelers right now?
Well, pretty much all of the airlines now require masks for traveling. I think there's one exception is Allegiant, where it's still recommended but not required. Many of the airlines, their employees, their customer-facing employees are wearing masks. But honestly, inside the terminal, there's plenty of room for social distancing as well. So, I think we're seeing the evolution of how that will transpire as travel begins to recover.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a friend who had an American Airlines flight booked from LA to Bozeman, and it was recently canceled. I was just curious, is that the airline? Is that the airports? Are flights being regularly canceled right now? And if so, are the markets, the direct markets to Bozeman, are those are being affected?
So what we're seeing right now really is the airlines are retrenching to their single most beneficial market for each individual airline. So, for example, Alaska Airlines has drawn their flights to basically just Seattle, Delta just to Salt Lake City, and United just to Denver. So we're seeing the old primary markets that we would have seen 20 years ago. Really, for the most part, becoming kind of our base level of service. But at the same time, we're seeing some, additional traffic. Airlines, Sun Country Airlines is going to start service from Minneapolis on June 3rd. So that will make up for a little bit of the void that Delta has in that market. We will, anticipate Allegiant beginning their Nashville service here on Thursday this week. So there are, hints of things coming up, but in particular for like the LA market, there's also the impacts of specific markets like California and New York that, the market is just quite a bit smaller at the moment of people that are willing to fly. So the nonstop potential will be reduced, and we'll probably go back to one-stop service for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm curious, what would you tell somebody looking to take a trip to the south of France or fly to the Caribbean at some point this summer? What are they looking to expect? What do you expect will be the approach?
Well, I think, the travel experience is certainly going to be different. Wearing a mask on a long haul flight like that will be different. The food service will be quite limited, if even existing. Even the beverage service will be reduced. The process at the airports, probably not all that different than what you've seen before, but on the other hand, concessions in the connecting terminals will be less. And I think the biggest impact will be, how easy it used to be for people in our area to get all over the world may now involve several connections, just because the options are limited throughout the nation and the world.
From a safety perspective, just to follow up on that, is there much difference, in terms of domestic versus international flight at this stage? I mean, certainly there are limitations, but.
Really, there's not a lot of difference. The big difference, I think, is when you go overseas or to other countries, you have that added, complexity of how that country is dealing with things. In some ways, we're still kind of dealing with that even within our country, because really the decisions have been delegated down to each governor of every state. And so, that also is creating some issues and challenges in trying to restart the travel economy, is because there are now 50 different levels of restrictions.
Gotcha. For employees and passengers, Brian, at Bozeman Airport, are you guys, what precautions are you guys taking? Temperatures, what precautions are you guys going for?
Well, at our airport right now, the inbound passengers are being screened with temperature checks by the National Guard. We expect that at some point will probably be reduced, especially when the 14-day quarantine is relaxed. We've got, like many places, the sneeze guards and the additional disinfectant stations and social distancing guidelines. But when you really look at it, if you're going to get into a small tube with a whole bunch of people, it's pretty difficult to be socially distant in that environment as well. Yeah,
absolutely. The other question I had was regarding Bozeman Airport. Are you guys are we at risk? Are you guys at risk of losing any flights permanently at this stage?
Well, I don't think, that we really know that right now. I think there is a strong desire for service to Bozeman. I think we're one of the few airports that, is going to see new service starting here, in the next couple of weeks. Most airports have completely retrenched and are just trying to maintain service. So, I think that's the good news. The bad news is we're only one side of the equation. The other side is, where the other market is and what the strength of that market is to, and interest into coming to Montana. So, I am optimistic that we will maintain, most of the service that we would have had this summer in future years, but I think it's a little bit early to tell. I think the other side of the equation is the airline side. Right now we're just hoping that all of the airlines survive, because they've been one of the most hard hit industries. And when you have 5,000 airplanes parked in the United States right now, that's a significant challenge for the airlines to get through. The CARES Act by the federal government is giving us some breathing room. It gave our airport some breathing room. I know that with our airport board, we're feeling pretty comfortable that we will withstand this this crisis. And even up at Big Sky, we have Kevin Kelleher, one of our board members, that is obviously available for people to talk to as well, because it's very there's a lot of things going on, but we'll get through it. And I think in essence, we'll come out pretty well on the backside. We just don't know how long that will be.
Yeah, of course. Everyone's got questions these days, and there aren't a whole lot of answers. But you know, the optimism is appreciated. You know, Brian, Wyoming opened entrances to Yellowstone National Park, but approximately 20% of travel to Yellowstone comes through Montana entrances. Tell us about some of the talks you've been having with officials at Yellowstone.
Well, I think, you know, with Yellowstone, the key is you know, what the state of Montana does for the 14-day quarantine. That will have to be lifted before we see significant, you know, increases in travel. That being said, you know, we will have in June, despite us being, you know, really quite a bit less available seats than last year, we're still going to be double what Jackson Hole has. Part of that's because of the size of our community, so we have more ability to support more service. So, you know, I don't anticipate that there will be a sudden rush through Wyoming to get to Yellowstone National Park. But even if we do relax the 14-day quarantine in early June, you know, I think like Taylor said, there's still a significant number of people that are going to avoid travel for a while. And, you know, that's going to mean that this will be a slow and steady, you know, recovery, and not something that is fast and furious. That's just not in the cards right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Brian, you know, you mentioned, you know, Bozeman is only one component of a flight. You know, there needs to be a landing and a taking off, of course. You know, is JetBlue still planning to offer service to Boston?
You know, right now they are. In fact, they're scheduled to start on June 13th. The bookings on that particular flight were exceeding their average, which is quite low right now. But the challenge is, you know, there's still some challenges on the East Coast. There are also a lot of challenges for JetBlue being able to find the aircraft and crew time to be able to do that, even though they've, you know, with the number of parked aircraft, you know, the airlines are trying really hard to fit those schedules in. And as of right now, we're pretty optimistic that they'll start up on June 13th. And again, that's just one more, I think, little small caveat that I think we're going to come through this, you know, fairly well considering the situation, but it's not anything that's going to be quickly.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Brian, I know you and your team have a lot of work cut out for you. You're doing a great job, and we really appreciate it. You know, what else would you like to talk to, you know, the audience about today? Anything that we haven't touched on? Anything you'd like to bring up?
Well, I think that, you know, I would guess that Taylor probably would echo this. Is, you know, we in this travel industry, we end up having a crisis, it seems like, on a regular basis, whether it's economic or September 11th. And this one's by far bigger and harder to deal with than what we've seen before. But, you know, each and every time we've gotten through those crises and you know, come out on the other end eventually stronger. Doesn't make it easy going through it, and I don't think any of us ever want to go through this one again. But you know, at the same time, I think if you look back 3 months ago and said that the entire economy of the United States and the world would be pretty much shut down, and 2 months into it, I think we're doing relatively well considering that as a society, as such. You know, but like Taylor said, we need to get the economy going again and do it in a logical step-by-step way so that we don't get back into a situation where we have to step back.
Yeah, of course. Well, Brian, thank you really for all you're doing and your team is doing. It's it's a difficult time, especially for the airline industry. We know that, along with another bunch of other industries. But really appreciate what you guys are doing, and thanks for joining us today.
You bet. Thank you very much.
Sure thing. All right, Eric, we'll go back to you. We've got a special guest here.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Brian and the team. Bringing it back up to Big Sky, the vacation rental home management business is a big one here. And there's a couple big players up here, and Big Sky Vacation Rentals is definitely one of them. And we have the owner, Kirsten King, with us today to talk a little bit about her industry and what she's seeing out there. Kirsten, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, first of all, just a big thanks to Outlaw Partners for inviting me today on the call. I think mainly because we serve out-of-state travelers to Montana and second homeowners. A lot of Big Sky locals don't know that we exist or that we're in the community. And we've grown from one property back in 2009 to about 125 luxury properties under management today. And these are primarily properties located in the ski and ski out communities at Big Sky Resort and Moonlight Basin. And we usually typically have 12 to 16 full-time year-round staff on our team, in addition to dozens of seasonal people. And we're proud that 80% of our full-time year-round staff live here in the Big Sky community.
Wow. Yeah, like I said, you're a big player in the community, and while some might not know you, we certainly do. You've got a good history with the community, a big employer, and managing that many properties. It's a huge. It's like running hotels. So we have not had someone on the panel yet to talk about the property management and vacation rental business in particular. So we're grateful to have you here today, because this is not only a big driver, but it's a big part of the economy, and there's a lot of property owners up here that are watching this right now, wondering what's going to go on with that business. So, let's dive into this. Obviously it was like turning off a faucet with your business when this hit mid-March. So kind of bring us through, quickly, from mid-March till now, kind of what your business has looked like, and then how are reservations looking for the spring and summer?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously March 16th was a big day for us. I think everyone in the community agrees it was the right decision at the right time, but it certainly wreaked havoc on what we were doing. Our first priority was just getting travelers home safely. We let people leave as soon as they were able to do so safely and refunded those reservations. We had about 380 impacted reservations between the day the resort closed and the end of the season. So it was pretty significant. Obviously, April, our revenue was down 98%. I don't think that's any surprise to anyone based on the number of cancellations that we had. And May is a low occupancy month traditionally for Big Sky anyway, but this May is certainly no exception. I think there's a perception in the vacation rental space that vacation rentals are busier than ever and people are just flocking to Montana. I can't speak for other owners of vacation rental companies or managers in the space, but I can tell you, May we had a 5% paid occupancy rate. So certainly not hitting it out of the park for spring. I think as we look forward into June, July, and August, it's a little tough to talk about the prospect of reservations without also addressing the issue of the 14-day quarantine. We pride ourselves on providing a really exceptional vacation experience in the community. We love to share the community we live, work, and play in, and that we love so much. And honestly, we just don't feel at this point that we can provide an experience that's on par with what somebody coming to our beautiful area would expect. So that's definitely been a challenge.
Yeah, no, it has been. And hopefully it sounds like, in the next, if things continue to progress, we'll be getting an answer on that quarantine here in the next couple of weeks. What's a typical, not typical, but I guess what are some more unique conversations that you're having with, let's go to two segments with, property owners right now. What are they concerned about? Are there people that are removing their homes from the rental pool market, or are they asking for certain types of adjustments? And then people that are calling, looking to potentially book reservations, what's a typical conversation that you might have with someone looking to do a reservation?
Yeah, well, just on the side of the guest and the communication that's happening, obviously we have a responsibility also to rent the homes that are under management, and that's why people have joined our portfolio. So it's that fine balance point of really looking ahead into summer and hoping that some of the restrictions will relax. At this point, we have a protocol in-house that we call every single guest who books, regardless of, if they book online or they book through an online travel platform. We're calling that guest and explaining the current travel restrictions, making sure that they understand, and that, if they do choose to come just for one reason or another, they want to just, be with just their family in their space for 3 days, that they understand what that means, and leaving a copy of the governor's directive on the counter. And, just helping people understand what the experience might look like. For people who are booking later into the summer, we've done things like relax our cancellation policies in an effort to give people confidence that we're not in the business of just wanting to keep their money if they can't travel. And again, that's a fine balance, because vacation rentals typically have much more stringent cancellation policies than hotels. And that's really to protect the owners, because owners are in exchange for that booking, they're setting aside their property, which is unique. And unlike a hotel, we can't just move somebody into another room. So, traditionally we've had strict policies, but for summer we've relaxed that, so that hopefully as we get further into the summer, if there's still some uncertainty, people will hold on to the last minute before canceling. So that's, on the traveler side of it. On the homeowner side, I have to say we're just blessed to have incredible owners. Relationships have always been the cornerstone of our management services. And I think our homeowners have been just exceptionally gracious, and even to the extent of offering to help employees who were placed out of work at the time of the closure. And I think most people understand that we're up against some pretty big obstacles right now, and they've been very patient. We've tried to launch some creative initiatives to assist them in getting future bookings, but that's how it sits right now.
Yeah. There's predictions that there's going to be, at least in the near term, and as Taylor kind of alluded, maybe into the winter, of a shift in maybe the not only the numbers, but also in potentially demographics. Have you seen a change in demographics at all? Are you getting more calls, for example, from drive-to markets or the direct flight markets versus, the longer haul, or people more out of market?
Yeah, really short term, May, for example, was pretty much all essential workers, extended stays, and people who already live in the state of Montana. And we definitely have seen for summer a greater interest in our drive market. So I think people want to come. They're really waiting to see if these restrictions ease up. But we definitely have interest from people, driving, versus normally we're always a fly market, and we have a lot of people coming from East and West Coast and Florida and Texas, and we're seeing a little less of that, more of the local market, making shorter, making trips into the summer.
Okay. You're in one of those dead bullseye businesses, as you said. I mean, and I hate to even repeat it, 98% down in business. So, it's hard to swallow and stomach that. And you're in one of those dead bullseye businesses that was impacted by COVID, like the airline business. What changes in protocols have your team had to put into place in terms of servicing properties, or anything different in terms of your day-to-day operations in relation to renting out homes?
Yeah, well, from the employee standpoint, we still have a responsibility as an essential business providing property management services separate from, the issue of vacation rentals, to be overseeing and managing the homes in our portfolio. So, that part of the equation really hasn't changed for us, other than how employees are, interacting with each other. So we have most of our staff is working from home, and they continue to do so. The property management side of it, the operations, we are fortunate in that each employee can be assigned a specific vehicle. They can have their portfolio of properties to be checking on, and they can conduct the day-to-day business that they need to do without interacting with other people. We see, as we move forward into actually having guests back in-house, there will be some new protocols, as I'm sure everyone is working through. And those include, delaying non-essential maintenance tasks that are reported. during a stay until after a guest departure. If we do need to go into a property to address a maintenance issue, the maintenance team will be wearing gloves and masks, asking some qualifying questions before they enter the property, and asking the guests to please vacate the area that they're working in. And that's just for the safety of both parties. So I think all of us in any business are working on, what does this look like? What's our new normal in terms of how we just operate day to day? We're utilizing technology solutions for guest check-ins that will allow us to still provide the same standard of service and level of care for the guest, but without a face-to-face interaction like we've done in the past. So lots of creativity going on our team right now.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for clarifying that. I didn't do a good job at the beginning. There's definitely two sides to your business. There's property management, and you manage a big portfolio of homes that need that day-to-day care or constant upkeep. And then there's the vacation rental side, which I was a little more focused in my question. So thank you for clarifying that. You've been around this business for a while, and like I said, you're one of the experts. What's your crystal ball tell you about the vacation rental business in the next year?
Yeah, I think a lot of times vacation rentals get just lumped into an equation of people deeming it an Airbnb or a VRBO. There's a lack of understanding of the difference between professionally managed properties and homeowner properties that are placed on an online travel site like Airbnb. And so I think one of the biggest things, I'm on webinars and Zoom calls almost every day with people in the industry working through a lot of these issues. And, I think you're going to see a greater standardization in properties. I think you'll see, a whole lot less throw pillows and throw blankets. Items that soft goods are a big challenge in our industry. What to do with all of the linens and the duvets and the comforters and everything that makes somebody's space unique and special. I think, there's already a lot of talk around how that's going to look in the post-COVID-19 world, and what changes are going to need to be made from a sanitization and cleaning standpoint, and what those protocols are going to look like. So, we're working on trying to be cutting edge on all of those issues and trying to come up with things that are manageable and don't, affect profitability so negatively that we can't stay in business, but give people traveling reassurance that it's safe to be here. And in some ways, I think vacation rentals really lend themselves to that experience. We don't have lobbies and elevators and meeting rooms, to contend with. We're really inviting somebody into a space that becomes theirs personally for the duration of the time, which is, to some extent, a lesser challenge than what Taylor and others who have, really large spaces have to contend with. So kudos to the resort for everything they're doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's hopefully we get this under control. I never was a big fan of my grandparents' couch with the plastic on it, so I don't want to go back to that. Kirsten, you're a big part of this community. What's something that's impressed you with Big Sky the last 9 weeks?
Yeah, it's just, really amazing to see all of the business owners coming together and trying to figure out how everyone can support each other. I mean, really, small things, but they mean a lot to the community. What Tally organized with the parade for everyone to participate in, to take out Thursdays and other efforts in the community to support these local businesses, it's obvious that if we have this low of occupancy rates, we're normally welcoming 30,000 plus people into Big Sky in a given year. That has a ripple effect in the community to all of the retail shops like Grizzly Outfitters and the Conoco and everyone else, to the restaurants and to the outfitters and to the activities that people visiting our community enjoy. So it's really been great to see people coming together, and I just encourage everyone in the community to continue to go local with whatever you can to support the business owners that are certainly experiencing some challenges right now.
No, absolutely. And it's a great way to put it. And it kind of reminded me, like, you're in Taylor's businesses are literally on the front end of the consumers coming in, and everybody's in a way relying on those bodies coming into both your beds and hotel rooms and all that type of stuff. So you are correct. There's a massive ripple effect. Kirsten, anything you'd like to close with, or anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to discuss with the audience today?
No, I just want to say how grateful I am for the employees that we have continued to be able to have as part of our organization, and just the tenacity and the creativity that they've shown throughout this, just new ideas, really looking at, and I'd encourage other business owners too, just really looking at the process you currently have in place, and is there a way to use this time to become more efficient? We're doing a lot of things right now that don't necessarily produce revenue on the front end, but we feel will create efficiencies on the back end that are going to allow us to be more profitable. So I think, the silver lining in this is we're grateful for the time that we've had. And, I would just encourage others to be looking at how you can improve things for the future, so that that experience that we look forward to, with welcoming people back into Big Sky, can be the best that it can be.
Excellent. Well put. Well put. Well, once again, I appreciate it. Kirsten King, Big Sky Vacation Rentals. Pretty impressive story. 98% drop in revenue, and there was a massive hit to that industry. They're starting to see things slowly turn back on, but until we get that quarantine situation under control, it's going to be a difficult business to really dive back into. But we'll be looking to reach out to you in a couple weeks and test the waters to see if that storyline is changing. So thank you once again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. All right, shifting gears, another return guest. We're starting to work through a lot of the community leaders a couple times on this platform. We have Daniel Bierschwale, the Executive Director of the Big Sky Resort Tax District, as well as he sits on the committee, I think they call it, of the Big Sky Relief Fund, an incredible effort that was put together when this COVID situation hit, raising a couple $1 million to help service a lot of the needs in the community. Daniel, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it, Eric.
And I will apologize to the audience and to you. I will catch myself a couple of times being Daniel or Danny. I've always called you Danny, but
go with Danny. You're good.
All right, we'll stick with Danny. So let's jump into the Big Sky Relief side of your world right now. For the audience, for those that aren't familiar, this was an incredible effort that was generated really quickly out of the gate when the COVID situation hit, raising a couple $1 million to address not only some of the needs at the medical center, but also to support locals and businesses. Give us a little update of how things have been rolling along with that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I would say we're transitioning from what has been kind of a sprint over into a marathon mode related to the Big Sky Relief efforts. I've been so proud to have worked with all the partners that are involved, both from the funding and resource side. We have all 3 local foundations: Yellowstone Club Community Foundation, Spanish Peaks Community Foundation, and Moonlight Community Foundation, all contributing towards addressing the resources and funding needs that exist within the community, as well as others who are there to support, including Lone Mountain Land Company and Big Sky Resort. So thanks to those efforts. We also have operational partners that have been very active in working to identify what the needs are within the community, and then working with those funding and resource partners to be able to actually address those needs. So we've got folks like the food bank and the fire department and the sheriffs that are all involved in making sure that we're really working towards addressing those needs. So moving away from kind of this sprint of immediately trying to set up the organization, making sure that we're providing weekly notices, bi-weekly notices and notes from our meetings that we were having as a group, and then pushing those out via bigskrelief.org, is now beginning to transition and throttle back a little bit related to where COVID-19 is in Big Sky and in Gallatin County. And we're beginning to shift into this mode of kind of a marathon and working towards making sure that we're addressing the needs, but still keeping the group assimilated and there to respond if any surge were ever to occur.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, it was an impressive feat, and Big Sky always impresses me with some of the things that we can pull off as a community without having that, a governance. We kind of put this together ourselves, a couple $1 million for this effort is a massive number. I've seen press from big cities like LA and San Diego that don't put together these types of targeted relief fund dollars. Can you release any information of how much money has been spent or not spent, but and gone out to the community?
Yeah, sure thing. So over $2 million has been committed amongst the joint efforts, both the philanthropic partners and the resort area district, which are public dollars. We have been able to, and there's a couple of different elements that relate to the Big Sky relief efforts. So between both the foundations and the resort tax dollars, we were able to secure multiple ventilators and expand the services here in Big Sky, but the foundations were also able to support through their dollars an expansion of the quantity of ventilators that are up in Bozeman Deaconess. We were able to actually assimilate that $1 million fund that was able to support the medical and health and ensuring that our community is safe and healthy. And then we were also able to assimilate some resources that were available for individuals. So over 174 grants have now gone out to individuals and families that are located within the Big Sky Resort Area District. Through the efforts of the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce in partnership with Visit Big Sky and the Resort Area District, over 57 businesses were actually able and eligible to receive a micro grant that was done through reallocation of resort tax dollars. So really proud of our efforts there. And then we have also been able to support directly through the resort tax funds some of the relief dollars that went to support the school through new technology, the food bank, and also most recently the wastewater surveillance system that has been done in partnership with the health department in Gallatin County. So in total, we're looking at somewhere around $1.32 million that have actually been gone towards contributing to relief efforts within the Big Sky Resort Area District in Big Sky, Montana. And we also have some dollars left over there as well to continue to support individuals and families, as well as nonprofits and government entities.
So if you're a family or a business owner out there listening to this and you're still on some hard times or you're coming into some really choppy waters, what would be your suggestion to them if they're considering looking for aid?
Yeah, I mean, my first suggestion would be to make sure to explore all the possible funding mechanisms and relief efforts that are out there. So there's I think state of Montana recently released quite a few new efforts that are available, ranging in terms of audience that they're designed to support. So look at those state efforts, look at those federal efforts, and then in addition to that, go to bigskyrelief.org and go to request funds. But I would say there's a lot of opportunity out there in order to receive some relief and make sure you're exploring all mechanisms possible.
Excellent. Danny, can you touch on that wastewater project for a moment for those that aren't familiar with that?
Yeah, sure thing. So through bigskyrelief.org, we have a subcommittee that was formed to review applications that were coming in for nonprofit organizations and government entities that were that were impacted in many ways from either an increase in service or increase in programs related to the COVID-19 impacts. And we received an application most recently in partnership from the Gallatin City County Health Department that is working with MSU in partnership for a surveillance system on wastewater. So we've worked with Gallatin County as well as MSU and our local water and sewer district to actually get this set up in Big Sky. And last week we approved the application for the wastewater surveillance treatment plant, and that'll get started here pretty soon as one of the tools in the toolkits for being able to see what the impacts of COVID-19 on our community are related to overall community surveillance.
Okay. So your day job, executive director of the resort tax, give us a little update on how that world's looking. You obviously just finished an election, got your board reseated, and you're heading into your allocation season. So, give us the the summary of where you're at and how you're looking.
Yeah, sure thing. So, going into May, not only did we have the uncertainty of COVID-19 and what the impacts would be related to our collections and requests from the community, but we also had three board seats that were up for election in May, and a 1% vote for an additional 1% for infrastructure in the community. And I can't be prouder of the Big Sky community for really turning out to the polls. I think it was around 54%, which we received in terms of total voter turnout. And if you were to talk to the Gallatin County Elections Office, they would say that is a significant turnout for Gallatin County. Kevin Germain, Sierra Wolf, and Grace Young were all voted onto our board. Very thankful to have such a wonderful slate of candidates actually here for the 6 that applied. So congratulations to those 3, and thank you to the other 3 for throwing your name out there to potentially serve on our board. The 1% for infrastructure is a massive win for the Big Sky community, and the fact that moving into our allocation cycle, what we were looking at was roughly $9 million in requests from the community, from the 3% resort tax funds that were already fairly significantly impacted from COVID-19. With the removal of the water and sewer district application because of the 1% vote, we're looking at $7.4 million in total requests, which is a significant reduction. Our board set forth, as soon as this thing kicked in, with a subcommittee to actually go out and interview many people throughout the community, region, and nationwide, actually. Huge thanks to Brian and Taylor. Both of their interviews were extremely insightful for our group. What we came out of that scenario planning with was a couple of themes and recommendations. One of the things that we learned was, the data that we received from both our VBS and chamber for tourism and hospitality is extremely valuable, as well as the data that we received from the airport from Brian and his crew. We learned also that, widespread testing is going to be important as one of the tools in the toolkit for recovery. Henceforth, the application for the surveillance, wastewater surveillance, is one of the tools in the toolkit. And then in addition to that, we're really looking at ensuring that we are able to make our dollars last as long as possible. So a couple of recommendations came out of that subcommittee. Probably the biggest recommendation from the group was, this thing is changing day by day. I wish that we had a magic 8 ball or a crystal ball in order to tell us where we're going to be at with the impacts of COVID-19 this winter and this fall. We know that that's not going to be the case at this time. So what we've done is we're taking what has traditionally been an annual process and breaking that out per the recommendation of the subcommittee into 6-month increments. So we'll basically be taking the first 6 months, July through December, and allocating those dollars in the spring allocation. But we're going to keep some powder dry for actually understanding what the impacts, long-term impacts, are going to be of COVID-19. So we'll be going through a second allocation process and application process this fall. So that's a pretty major shift for the resort tax, and we're doing that in an effort to really be as fiscally responsible as possible in supporting the community as we move through this time of need. We're going to need to continue to rely on collaboration with the philanthropic community and keeping that relief fund open. We'll continue to do that and evaluate it. And we're really operationally as an organization also holding ourselves to the same standards. So there's kind of a 6-month check-in that's going to be happening for the next year, maybe even 2 years, as we continue to move through this process. And in addition to those pieces, we're also going to be collaborating more intently with our counties. Was exchanged in a conversation today with county administrator on the Gallatin side, ensuring that our budget timeframe is in alignment, and that we're continuing to have conversations about how to really maximize our dollars and our collaborative efforts, similar to things like the sheriffs and the 911 projects that we funded in the past.
Excellent. Well, that's a great update, and I appreciate that. And once again, that's a major driver of our community is the resort tax. Any closing words, Danny, from either the relief fund side or the resort tax?
We're all in this together, and I think we should all be extremely thankful of living where we do, having the economy that we do, and working together is how we're going to get out of this thing. And thank you for everyone and all of your efforts in this community, both from a small business perspective all the way up to the large organizations like Big Sky Resort and our local airport. So thanks for the coverage, Eric.
No, our pleasure. It's we all got to play a role in this, and this has been our pivot, and this is our role to play, and happy to do it. I'll throw one last softball at you. What are you grateful for today, Danny?
I'm grateful for the sound of sandhill cranes and spring run brown trout.
All right. Those are two beautiful things to be grateful for. All right, before I throw it back to Joe, the audience has chimed in and given us some questions. So I'm going to bring Taylor back for a couple quick questions. Taylor, one of the questions from the audience that's come in a couple times is an update on your capital improvement projects. Obviously, Big Sky was slated to do some pretty big changes with lifts and some other infrastructure this summer. Where do you stand, and any updates on the capital improvement project front?
Yeah, that's a good question. This COVID mess caught us right in the middle of the biggest capital improvement multi-year plan that Big Sky Resort had ever seen, right? We got the R8, Ram Charger 8 put in a couple of years ago, and then the Exchange, Mountain Mall remodel, just amazing. Looking forward, this coming year, the year that we are in now, we were going to be remodeling a couple of our hotels. We were going to be building another major phase of workforce housing. We've had 3 major phases of workforce housing completed in the last 4 years, and we were going to add another one this summer. And then, of course, we were going to install another Doppelmayr D-Line, just like Ram Charger 8, only this is going to be a D-Line 6 for Swift Current. It's a really cool lift. The lift's already been manufactured. It's sitting in a yard in Wolfurt, Austria. We are continuing planning and engineering and design work for the installation of that lift. We will get some geotech footings for that lift installed this summer, simply to facilitate the construction that we did postpone until next summer. So all the major capital projects have been put on hold. We're keeping our powder dry. We are some of the people that are on the call might have heard me talking about Swift Current before. It's such a complex install to build any lift, and especially a lift as big and heavy as Swift Current, in one summer season. And one of the factors that played into our decision making was we could not risk removing a perfectly good lift, Swift Current, and not have the new Swift Current D-Line installed by this coming fall. That wasn't the only decision, but that's certainly one of the decisions. So pardon the blah, 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 a lot of explanation. Planning and design still underway, a little bit of construction and preparatory construction this summer, but the primary install has been delayed until next summer.
Okay, great. We're getting some great feedback that you announced that so far that the rut is still on. Is that a TBD, or are you feeling pretty good that you're gonna be able to pull that off this fall?
Are you gonna run it?
Oh, I don't know about that. I think you're full, so I don't think I have a chance.
I'm gonna do the VK. If I can do the VK, you can do the full thing. It's still on, it's still on, and those Mike and Mike that run the rut are just unbelievable partners, and it's a fantastic event with approximately 3,000 registrants for the rut. And fortunately, it falls late in the summer over Labor Day weekend. So it's still a go right now. Let's hope that it stays a go.
Well, I'll hold out on the PBR if you hold out on the rut. We're going to hope that both of them happen. PBR is the same way. We're still hoping we make it happen, but we need the right trends to improve to make that happen. But that's great news on the rut front. That's certainly an institution.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, I got a question for Kirsten King. Kirsten, can you hear me?
Yeah, if I unmute myself, I can.
So you and I are in exactly the same boat. We've got 2 college kids that got booted out of college living at home. How's that going?
Well, it's a darn good thing I have a small little apartment above my garage. So we're still social for each other. You know, she got a taste of social life for the first time and then right back into Big Sky.
Yeah, good for you. Well, one of the good things that's come out of this big mess is having your daughter back at home with you and one of my daughters that was in college back at home with me. I'm glad it's working out.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Taylor, for that. I appreciate that. Well, we always like to, what we found with this Zoom platform in the town hall is that we're getting a lot better responses when we close with some humor and some levity. And there is not a better way to close it than our last guest today. So he doesn't need much of an introduction at all. And his hairdo seems to be improving through this COVID process. So Joe O'Connor, why don't you close this baby out today?
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Well, our next guest has lived in Big Sky for 20 years, and he's taught 18 years, 4th grade, and 2 years of 6th through 12. His title is a mouthful. Lead Facilitator of Creativity and Innovation for the Big Sky School District. Hi, JJ.
Hi, Joe.
Your title sounds like something out of Calvin and Hobbes.
Ironically, I used to draw Calvin and Hobbes when I was a teenager. It was my favorite thing to draw.
Yeah, did you really? Well, yeah, it's sort of like Supreme Dictator and High Pumbaa. What does your title mean?
I think it's a fancy way of saying I run a design classroom and I want my students to be creative and innovative as much as they possibly can, which we're all are innovators and creators. It's just tapping into that part of our brains and our souls that helps me do that. So I just facilitate it. I try to be that, like a river guide or a backpacking guide or something more like that, and push them along, nudge them along when needed, but not stand at the front of the room and tell them what they need. So
Gotcha. So yeah, so you're not really innovating anything, you're just inspiring innovation.
yes, perfect.
Gotcha. So everyone, you'll notice where I am. I don't know if you'll recognize this. This is Jeremy Harder's classroom. JJ, are you still in the gym?
Nope, Joe. I've got my tape measure out and I'm right here.
6 foot distance.
6 foot.
What do you think about that? That is something that we were asked to do, and we are actually doing it. We're taking it very seriously. JJ, so how did the last 2 months of online learning go for you, from your perspective?
Good question. I'm not sure if I have a really accurate answer because one thing before I get started though is our district, was able to pull this off nearly 2 days after schools were shut down. So I've got to commend the school board and administration and our tech team and all the teachers and staff here to just get it up and running. I mean, we busted it out coming out of the gates hot. I mean, there are some schools that never even got back to where we started. So it was cool. The first couple of weeks were neat and different. And, then it was a little bumpy getting student engagement, teacher engagement. but we're wrapping things up this next week here. So we're excited to close this chapter and reflect on what worked, what didn't work, how can we change possibly the face of education, and if there's any time better than now, we can take what the needs of our students are and try to, mesh that into our current education system.
Yeah, sure. And, obviously online learning is for the students. I'd like to know what you learned during this time.
I learned a couple things. A lot of it was personal stuff. I learned that I can't plan way ahead, which I think is beneficial. Allow things to grow organically in the classroom, also in my life. Another thing that happened was I saw my 10-year-old, Elijah, mature and become so independent that there were days that he was working on his classwork and I wasn't sure if he was in the house or not. And so that was really cool to know that I could leave him in there and he went and crushed his work. So that was really neat to watch that. The other thing I learned is sometimes I would take things personally when students would not hand in projects. And I've learned over the last 8-9 weeks that don't do that. Don't take it personally. Everybody's going through this in a different way, and some of us deal with it differently. And to bring some grace into how we treat ourselves, and then that trickles down to how we treat our students, because I have no idea what they're going through. And it's one of those periods where you allow things to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're talking about the kids. Do you miss them?
Of course. I mean, my classroom, my philosophy since, when I first started was building relationships. And I think 70% of a classroom is building a relationship with a student, which, built on trust. And when they trust you and they like you, and you treat them like an individual, you get a lot greater response and engagement from them than you would otherwise. So it's hard to engage, doing what we're doing right now. It's a challenge to not be physically near people and feel what they're going through and what the struggles are. I'm not sitting next to them while they're doing their projects for me and seeing their struggles or their excitement. So it's hard for me to reflect on that and modify the project or the classroom. So you lose that aspect, and that's like so huge in education, is building those relationships. So it's been tough for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking the other day, both my parents are educators and I have great respect for teachers, and it's a seriously difficult time you guys are all going through. What's the ideal situation look like for this school district this fall?
I'm trying not to think about that. Realistically, the ideal is we all come back and we're in the classroom and, taking the things we've learned from this situation and improving on them, and, maybe tapping into more of what our student needs are, whether that's academically, social, emotional. I think we could possibly trim the fat from some of our curriculum. I'm not talking about just BSSD, but in a global sense, if there are things that are no longer applicable to life, and we probably found that out in the last 9 weeks, then maybe we shed some of that. That would be ideal. Make learning completely authentic. Those are some things that, I've been brainstorming around lately in my head and with some other groups of people, besides my admin and staff. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the ideal. What's the reality?
The reality is, it's too far ahead to know. The reality is if the RUT is running and PBR is running, well, those two pieces, then maybe school will be running. So the reality is if we do have to modify something, I hope it would be something that would involve, part-time virtual, part-time face-to-face. It's a great opportunity to move learning outdoors, because that seems to be a place where there's less contamination. And so maybe we go back to that learning style too. what I do know is that a lot of really cool things can come out of this. And I hope they do, whether we're face-to-face full-time or we're virtual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of opportunity. We've seen a lot of businesses, a lot of groups, a lot of organizations, not only in Big Sky, but around the country, who are being innovative and creative and finding new ways to do things. You know, from an educator standpoint, what's one or two things that you think could change that might update, if not better, the education system?
I think, going back to that trimming the fat stuff, if we find out there was things we couldn't teach virtually that weren't working, then maybe that wasn't applicable to everyone all the students who are at home, trying to learn content. Maybe we get rid of some of that. There's an idea about standardized tests. I'm not going to get too political about it, but I've never been a fan of it, and maybe we've realized that both through equality and quality, that they aren't great predictors, and maybe we go back to realizing that it's performance in classroom, performance in and out of school, and extracurricular stuff, and community organizations and things like that really tell a better picture of who a person is than a score on a card. And I say that because I was never a really good test taker, but I felt like I was a really good individual that helped out our community. So I think that's one thing. And I think the other thing has to be, education is the one thing when we design products, when we design buildings, when we design things, the first thing we do is create empathy with our user, and we ask them, what do you want from this? What do you want from this product? What do you want from your house? What do you want from whatever it is? Education is the one place where we have yet to go and truly get an idea of our users and what they need and what they want. And it's sort of baffling at times that the people making decisions in some of the positions in government have never even spent a day in a classroom. I don't know. I think, but if we can touch on those things, trim some of the stuff that's not authentic, and really get in tune with what our students' needs are.
Yeah. No, that's a great answer. I want to get into something, kind of serious, a little more in the operational side of teaching in a digital online environment. How do you deal with tardiness?
Online? We give out detentions, virtual detentions. So we usually email the parents and tell them to lock them in a closet or in the room for 30 minutes. There's not really a way you can do that. In my classes, my attendance has been, throughout the school, I should say, we were keeping track of attendance. And for, I'd say, 6 weeks, it was really, really strong, actually stronger than some of our non-virtual or face-to-face. But things have been, slowly, becoming a little different data set. But, it's also the end of the school year. So here you are dealing with the end of the school year, and now you're virtually doing it, and it's a challenge. But
sure.
What I feel most about is our senior class, who didn't get to do all the things all of us got to do. And so, we are trying to create a really cool and unique experience here on Saturday for our graduates. So we're doing the best with what we have that we can deal with.
In the last few minutes that we have left, just quickly, could you touch on the approach you guys are taking on Saturday for graduation?
So Saturday is going to look a little bit like a drive-in theater, a little bit like a spread out football cheering. Well, it's actually matches some of our crowds on the weekends on our football games. Very spaced out. Our graduates will be there. There will be a virtual piece to it. I don't want to give that secret away in case there's anyone watching. And then there will be an actual face-to-face sort of humanistic part. So now you can only pray for weather, but we do have a backup plan in our gymnasium.
Gotcha. Back to, the situation that's caused the school to close, the situation that we're all in right now, this COVID-19 coronavirus, it isn't all bad. I mean, you started Radio Big Sky.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a way to get creative, get some positive things out. I don't know how many viewers we have, and I don't look at the analytics, but I did it selfishly to help me create some creative space. I did it, as a way for our audience and our, people in Big Sky or wherever they are tuning in to see that there are things people are doing that are creative, and we're still having conversations and discussions about life and important things and what we see that are coming out of this in a positive effect. So, and there were some that were really fun, like a group of the Big Sky Community Theater still want to be creative and still want to have fun. So some of our skits, regardless of content, were based wholeheartedly on taking a light situation and looking at it differently.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a blast working with you through the theater. And then as we continue this sort of virtual skit type situation in the community, they're hilarious and it's a lot of fun.
A lot of fun.
Well, I can tell you, it's kind of odd having you right next to me and looking into the screen, but I really appreciate you, having you on. Love to hear, just a couple things. We heard from a couple people about what they're grateful for. I'd love to hear what you're grateful for, what you're seeing in this community, and anything, else that you'd like to touch on.
Well, I know there's people been on here for a while, so I have a hard time making things brief, but I'm going to say I'm grateful that we have been given the opportunity to look at our perspective of our world and the people around us. In big systems like ecology, smaller systems like education, and then our own little system that we wake up with every day. So through all those systems, I think we're gonna find some really cool stuff about ourselves and about human nature and everything else that's bigger than us. So thank you, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate you coming down to my classroom.
Yeah, well, it's good to be back in the classroom again. I figured maybe I could learn something this time.
Well, this time probably not, but maybe.
Well, again, thank you, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into this episode of the Town Hall. And for our other panelists, thank you so much for being here. And we wanted to just give a shout out first to, our sponsors, Big Sky Chamber of Commerce and the Big Sky Town Center. We couldn't make these town halls happen without you. So thank you very much for that. And, in sort of the vein of the Chamber of Commerce in Town Center, we just want to let everybody know to continue shopping local. Get outside and support your local businesses, our restaurants, our shops. We're all in this together and we all need each other to make this work. And we will get there. One last thing from Jeremy is he wants to chat about the summer camp real quick.
Real brief.
Real brief.
Those of you watching who are wondering what's going on with all the Big Sky area summer camps, we have been working together for shared guidelines and best practices for this summer. Please join us Friday on Facebook Live on the BSCO page at 5:30 to find out all that information. So join in and you will get your info about all the summer camps in Big Sky.
Yeah, absolutely. No, those are fantastic. Appreciate you guys doing those. One last thing for everybody out there. We want to give a special shout out to the Lone Peak High School seniors graduating this Saturday. The class of 2020, congratulations. From EBS and the Outlaw partners, I think it's backwards, but that's okay. You guys can read backwards. You've been educated by this guy. Thank you again for joining us, you guys. And yeah, we'll see you next time.